I'm John, and I can roll a crit. Today, I'm here with you to talk about my brand new series for YouTube, Rate My Deck. Rate My Deck is my brand new Warhammer Underworlds series dedicated to deck building. What people do is, when I put out the call on my social media, people just send me in their decks with their name or whatever they want to be called. The deck link, obviously, their play style, so I can tell what their deck is trying to achieve, and then their card collection, so I know what exactly they own. And then based on that, I go through the deck, analyze it based on my competitive experience, what changes and improvements I'd make, and then suggest cards that they might want to buy or expansions if they need to go a bit further than what they already own. But it should be a lot of fun, and, well, today's the first episode. First, I want to thank everyone who sent in their decks. There's way more than I expected, which is great. Unfortunately, that means I can't put them all into one video, but it does mean I can definitely do a few more of these. So if you haven't seen your deck yet, don't worry, it'll be coming in a future video. For today's first episode of Rate My Deck, I've got 5 very good, different, and unique decks to go over. So they should be a lot of fun for everyone to see and analyze. Alright, so first up we have a fan favourite, Zarbag's Gitz. But this is from Chris in Reading, so thank you for your submission. Deck name, just Zarbag's Gitz. Nothing out of the ordinary, not necessary. And then playstyle is hold objectives. And he owns pretty much everything. So with that out of the way, let's get to the deck. Okay, first with the objectives. So we have Mad Scurry, Obliterated, Martyred, Supremacy, Shortcut, Coveted Spoils, Dug In, Path to Victory, Scrum, Swift Capture, and Temporary Victory and Uncontested. So already you have a quite heavy focus into hold objective play because, you've got Supremacy, Coveted Spoils, Dug In, Path to Victory, Swift Capture, Temporary Victory, and Uncontested. With our restricted cards so far being Temporary Victory and Scrum. So that's 2 out of our possible 3 cards. Next, going on to Gambits, we have Sneaky Step, Center of Attention, Confusion, Irresistible Prize, Mirror Move, Shadow Step, Shifting Reflection, Sidestep, 2 steps forward, and Distraction, which is, as you can tell, basically all dedicated to either disrupting or supporting hold objective play. Then for upgrades, we've got Crown of Avarice, Faneway Crystal, Great Strength, Potion of Rage, Tome of Glories, Quickening Greaves, Spectral Armor, Amberbone Spear, Cryptic Companion, and Guardian of Glaive. So, Cryptic Companion rounds out our restricted cards. But as you see, with the good thing for most hold objective decks is the upgrades are geared more towards aggro. You've got a few hold objective supporting cards, mainly just Cryptic Companion, Faneway Crystal, Tome of Glories, and Quickening Greaves. Then you've got Crown of Avarice and Spectral Armor, which are defensive cards. Then you've got some really nice aggro with Guardian Glaive, Amberbone Spear, Great Strength, Potion of Rage. Pretty good. Overall, I'd make very little changes. This is a deck which is, I'd say, pretty much as good as it comes. It heavily relies on the player's skill because some cards will completely go against what you're running, like Mad Scurry, for example. It's a great round 1 card, but as it goes into round 2 and 3, once you've generally done all your Scurry moves, it's really hard to score again without sacrificing your push cards. But generally, it's a backup plan because the good thing about hold objectives decks, as you can see, they have a really high glory ceiling. For example, this deck has 2, 4, 5, 8, 9, 12, 16, 18, 19, 20, 22, 25 glory. Now, realistically, you're not really going to score everything. But generally, you score most of these things. And people will go, well, isn't it a bit redundant having Coveted Spoils, Dug In, and Uncontested? Well, the thing is, Dug In is really good if you're playing hold objectives because it's basically a round 2 free Supremacy. And especially which is really good about Dug In is combined with Quickening Greaves. If you play this at the end of round 1 and say you're holding 2 objectives at the start of round 2 before priority, you can use this to push onto 3 objectives, which is clarified in the FAQ, so you can technically score this in 1 round. Obliterated is just a great card because of Snark. Martyred is good, but once again, it can be played around against strong players who may not just try and kill into you. Shortcut is some nice passive glory, and then Temporary Victory is amazing and Scrum because they can just really score that quite easily with Scurry. Coveted Spoils once again, it's actually quite doable because he's got 2 ways with mirror move, 3 ways, sorry, mirror move, distraction, and irresistible prize to actually get 3 enemy fighters onto objectives if he needs to. Shame there's no Restless Prize. Personally, I would probably drop Scrum, but I'm not sure what I would replace it with. And then I would add in Restless Prize, because to me that's essential. That's the only thing this deck is missing. But you've got really nice set of pushes. And Shifting Reflections is essential, because, for example, with Shortcut, so you score this immediately every time you switch a fighter from a different hex. And you can score that with Shifting Reflection, Shadow Step, and Confusion. So really easy ways to score it. But you have to remember you've only got 3 ways to score it. So generally, if you don't draw into any of those, like if you don't draw into Shifting Reflection, you will need to hold on to at least one of these cards just until you get draw into Shifting Reflection. Upgrades wise, I think it's pretty much perfect. I mean, I'm always a fan of Fated Blade, but either era is good. Personally, I'd probably drop Guardian Glaive for Fated Blade, but either is fine. I like Amber Bone Spear for the range 2, and obviously when you kill someone with it, you get extra glory. But other than that, yeah, I think it's pretty much perfect. All right, next up we have Mark with his Rippa's Snarlfangs. It's basically an aggro deck, as you'd expect, mainly from Rippa's Snarlfangs, just designed to get into someone's face as quickly as possible. He owns all of Beastgrave, but not the gift pack. Does not own Night Vault, Eyes of the Nine, Zarbag's Gitz, and Steelheart's Champion, Shadespire, Iron Skull's Void, and Zarbag's Gitz. So it's still a growing collection, but as long as you have all of Beastgrave, that's generally quite fine. Once again, no unique deck name, but that's fine. We're on Underworlds DB, which is my personal favourite for deck building websites. And that's the change from the last one, which was Deckers. So, first we have Cover Ground, Fired Up, Solid Gains, Burning Spite, Cruel Hunters, Loaded with Plunder, No Mercy, Brought to Bay, Conquest, Gathered Momentum, Team Effort, and Unexpected Pitfall, which is a quite solid aggro deck. It's got enough passive objectives for you to score on the move while you're getting to your opponent while you can't kill, which is pretty much essential to make a reliable objective deck for aggro. Gambit-wise, also no restricted cards there. Gambits, we've got Distraction, Lethal Ward, Pit Trap, Defensive Maneuver, Furious Reprisal, Narrow Escape, Pack Tactics, Vindictive Attack, Snare, and Tracking, with Pit Trap being our first restricted card. So it's already got the staples of Pit Trap and Snare for Rippa's deck, because they're all hunters. So technically, it's quite easy for them to one-shot a 4-wound fighter if they have both in hand, either with Rippa or if any of the Snarlfang attacks succeed. Then for upgrades, we've got Mutating Maul, Potion of Rage, Bonded, Embittered Survivor, Loping Strides, Great Fortitude, Great Strength, Sting of the Urgrub, Survival Instincts, and Trophy Belt. So that's where the rest of our restricted cards go into. It's quite an interesting deck. Glory Ceiling is 15, but this is quite deceptive when it comes to aggro decks. Namely because a lot of these objectives are kill-based. So, for example, let's see. Brought to Bay, which is kill an enemy fighter in enemy territory as a hunter. So that's 1 glory as a surge, but then as a trade-off, it's 1 glory, but it's technically 2 because you get 1 glory for taking out an enemy fighter. So it's a 2 glory card. And it's also hunter dependent, but all the warbands hunter dependent. Gathered Momentum is just easy one. Unexpected Pitfall, which is a good one. So that's technically a 2 glory. Obviously, surges, which are aggro-based, actually excel when they're scored individually, because once again, you could score Unexpected Pitfall. Well, you can't. Well, like Brought to Bay, if it's stacked with another one, you could technically score like 3 other surges, or 2 other surges with it, and get 4 glory. But if you scored them individually, you'd get 6. But obviously, it depends on the map. Unexpected Pitfall is fine. He's got Pit Trap and Snare, which is not a bad way to score it. Lethal Hexes, and he's got Distraction and Lethal Ward. So it's not bad. The only thing I'd find with Unexpected Pitfall is just a bit too situational with this warband, and it may brick your deck if you don't have any way to actually score it. I mean, you can always just hit someone, leave them on 1 wound, and then drive them back into a lethal hex, but that requires positioning, and it's more luck-based. Burning Spite is another really situational card because it requires 2 or more friendly fighters to be inspired. Now, generally, Rippa himself inspires when he has 3 or more upgrades, 2 more upgrades, sorry. But the rest of the warband inspires when Rippa is selected as an attack as the target of an attack action. The issue is canny opponents generally won't attack Rippa unless the other Snarlfangs are dead. I'm not really a fan of Burning Spite. Cover Ground and Gathered Momentum are pretty good. Gathered Momentum you can score easily while inspired, and it's not too much to score while not inspired. No Mercy is successfully succeed in attack action against a wounded fighter, which is really good. Easy for the Rippers with their basically built-in combo. Then you've got Solid Gains fired up. Cruel Hunters, which is amazingly good. All you need to do is take out 2 enemy fighters or more out of action and have 1 or more friendly fighters in enemy territory, so it's really good to get 2 glory. Loaded with Plunder, you just need a fighter with 3 or more upgrades. Generally, it's going to be Rippa. Conquest, it's good. It's just the only issue, it's 2 glory and it's a 3rd end phase. It's reliable, but it can brick up your hand. Team Effort is really good. You just need to activate all of your fighters just a minimum of once, and when you've got 3 fighters, that's really easy to do. But personally, I would probably drop Burning Spite or making 3 attack actions. I'll just check what that is. So yeah, I'd probably swap that for Steadied Assault because it's quite difficult to do with Ripper until he's inspired, but it's really good to score with Stick It or Mean Eye, just because you can shoot someone or attack someone from range 2 or 3 and then charge in, and then it takes 2 activations, but it's way more reliable than Burning Spite, so I definitely swap in Steady Assault. Gambit wise, it's pretty much fine. Distraction's really good because it gets to push a fighter. Pit Trap, Defensive Maneuver I quite like because you can charge in, push away for safety, and then get a guard token, which prevents you being driven back. I really like Furious Reprisal because it combos well with fighters on guard, especially with Defensive Maneuver and Survival Instincts, because that you on guard. And you can even score it with, well, you can even play it with Stick It and Mean Eye, even if they're driven back because they have range 2 and 3 attack actions. Narrow Escape is really good because it reduces the damage by 1, so it can keep you alive. It's surprise damage negation. Pack Tactics is a better faction sidestep. Vindictive Attack is really good because it's +2 dice. And then Tracking, once again, really good because it's just Spectral Wings. Personally, I would try and get... Well, I'll go through the rest of the cards, but it's basically I would try and add in Spectral Wings, which I'd probably drop. That's the difficult thing. I really like Buried Instinct as well, but I prefer Defensive Maneuver because it's more controlled. Then for the upgrades, you've got Mutating Maul, which is really good because then it'd be Cleave or Knockback 1. Potion of Rage, once again, really good. Bonded is amazing because you count as supported for yourself, which helps with Ripper's Snarlfangs, well, the Snarlfang attacks. Embittered Survivor for +1 wounds. Loping Strides for +2 move. Great Fortitude for another +1 wounds. Great Strength, which is really good. Sting of the Urgrub, because basically all of them can go on Stick It. Well, all of them can go on Ripper. Sting can go on Stick It when he's inspired because he gets a range 1 scything attack. And then Survival Instincts and Trophy Belt. So yeah, while it's a solid deck, cards I'd recommend is Tome of Offerings. The issue with this is it's better than Trophy Belt, but the downside is it's a Night Vault card and it's an expansion you don't own. So its life, unless you really like Godsworn Hunt, is very limited in terms of usage. But it's worth mentioning. So yeah, I've made my slight improvements, so I call Mark's Improved Snarlfangs. So what I've mainly done is this does involve requiring buying the gift pack, but I think it's a pretty good purchase what you get out of it, despite you already owning some of the cards. So the big changes I've made is I've dropped Unexpected Pitfall for Bold Conquest, and Bold Conquest is score immediately as a surge when your leader makes a charge action and is then holding an objective. It's basically guaranteed glory without you needing to roll dice and very easy to do with Ripper, especially with the packing distraction. So that's a boon to glory. Because of that, I've restructured the deck a bit in terms of Gambit. So I've got Spectral Wings now, just to help with more mobility to help you get into cover ground and gathered momentum while uninspired or lacking any glory. Steady Assault is also in there, just because it's quite easy to do with Rippa Snarlfangs. While you'll still get the benefit of Pit Trap and Snare because of that 4 damage boost. Well, the ability to shot a 4-wind fighter early on. Upgrades, Mutating Maul is good. You could probably swap it out for something like Swordbreaker or Nullstone Sword, just because they're free smash. And while Cleaver's nice, I generally prefer going with the free smash. Potion of Rage is good, but I also would recommend sidestepping into Prized Vendetta, but that revolves around buying not the gift pack, Power and Bound. So once again, I've just left it for Potion of Rage because either's fine. It's just because Prized Vendetta works with rerolling your Snarlfang attack dice. And that's pretty much it. That's for that deck. It just needs some slight tweaks, and it does involve Mark buying the gift pack. But I think with that, you make it a more well-rounded deck that's just a bit more reliable and does what it wants to do, but just a little bit better. Next, we have Peter, also from Reading, with his Magore's Fiends. And this is, once again, another aggro deck, with some passive, of course. But he also doesn't like Frugal and wants to make space for Earthing Stone. Also owns everything. So let's look at the third deck for Rate My Deck. Once again, we're back on Deckers. So for the objectives, we've got Branching Fate, Calculated Risk, Fired Up, Frugal, Great Gains, Keep Chopping, Solid Gains, Strong Start, What Armor, Gathered Momentum, Team Effort, and Cover Ground. So you've got a lot of aggro staples, but then you've got a few cards that I describe as Win More. And Win More cards are basically, they're tempo cards. They're based on you scoring glory objectives without much interaction from your opponent. And having 1 or 2 is good, but having 3 is already quite a weak spot, because if you have, let's say, for example, your starting hand is Solid Gains, Frugal, and Great Gains, you can get rid of that. That's just, you've lost 4 glory, but also really hard to do, because you might get Solid Gains, but then you need to kill 3 people. It just bricks your deck a lot. But let's see. Cover Ground, interesting. Gather Momentum makes sense with Ripper. But let's look at the rest of the deck. So for Gambits, got Demonic Resilience, Furious Inspiration, Pit Trap, Inspired Attack, Desperate Flight, Sidestep, Sitting Target, Tracking, Distraction, and Spectral Wings. So Pit Trap is one of our restricted cards, as is Calculated Risk. And then for upgrade, you got Glory Seeker, Potion of Rage, Tome of Offering, Amberbone Axe, Amberbone Dagger, Amberbone Spear, Sing of the Ogre, Sprinting Charm, Great Strength, and Great Fortitude. So already our third restricted card is Tome of Offering. At the moment, the glory of the deck is only 14, but once again, it's an aggro deck. So Strong Start would, like, let's say you score everything with a minimum of 1 kill. That's 15 glory deck. Not bad, but not great either. What Armor makes sense because Magore scores it really easily for you. Even Ripper does. Riptooth, there we go. Because when he rolls a crit, he has Cleave, at least when inspired. Cover Ground, Ripper can score it. Riptooth can score it while inspired. No, Gathered Momentum, sorry. Cover Ground, he can score. You'll need to get some cards for that. Team Effort makes sense because you've only got 4 fighters, so if you're just activating them to move up, that makes sense. Branching Fate, you've got Riptooth out of the gate who can score that, then Bartok and Zarkus who can score it while inspired. Fired Up makes sense. Keep Chopping actually makes sense because they're one of the few warbands that can score this quite easily, because you can only score it when you've made an attack action during an activation, and Gore Fists trigger during an opponent's attack action. So that would make sense for Keep Chopping. Which I like. I actually like Great Gains. It's just I wouldn't have Great Gains, Solid Gains, and Frugal. So those are going to be the main weaknesses of the deck. It's the issue of thinking what you can replace those with. I like Strong Start because you have quite an elite warband. Yeah, generally the only things I would replace is probably Frugal and Solid Gains. But we'll see. And then with the Gambits, I like Demonic Resilience because it's a great counter card because it just limits you to taking 1 damage. Furious Inspiration makes sense. Already got Spectral Wings. Inspired Attack is really good because it's +1 dice of damage while inspired. Desperate Flight I really like for aggro warbands because you scatter 4, then push 3 hexes. which is basically a much better sidestep. Sidestep is still really good. Sitting target makes sense because it's +1 dice and ensnare, and you really want the ensnare, but you just have to remember the target has to have no move or charge tokens. Tracking, even though it's just +1 move for this warband, it's still really good. Distraction, great. I still think Pit Trap is the weak link here. And then obviously with the upgrade deck, Glory Seeker, Sting of the Grub, and Great Strength makes sense. Great Fortitude, yep. I actually like Sprinting Charm. It's just really bad in round 3, but I like the trade-off because it's great speed, then super great speed, then really bad. Tome of Offering makes sense because it's aggro deck. Potion of Rage is good. I'm just not keen on these weapons because I understand the rationale. They help score more cards. But it's just not great. I like Amberbone's Spear, but it's just Axe and Dagger are just just because you want to help stuff with your mobility. So what I'd probably do is actually I'd definitely drop Amberbone Dagger for Victor's speed, because it's great speed that you can play for free if you kill someone adjacent to you. Real struggle is going to be with the objective deck. Let me bring up Underworlds DB and look through the objectives and see what I'd add. So I'd probably drop Frugal at least for Keep Moving. It's basically like team effort. The only problem is it gets much worse outside of round 1. I think that round 1 trade-off is really good because you just have to make 4 move actions, and if you have that in team effort round 1 and someone's sat back, it's really good to get off early. I would drop Branching Fate for No Escape, so making 3 or more charge actions. Yeah, the trade-off is Branching Fate is generally more reliable when inspired, but when you're not, and considering you're pumping out a lot of dice cards, and I understand, especially when you get like long-boarded or diagonal-boarded as aggro, it's really hard to score No Escape, but I'd still prefer it because it doesn't require dice, and you can set it up quite well. The issue is, though, it's just really a struggle to try and fit in more end-phase objectives for aggro at the moment, especially if they're not hunters. So I'd keep the deck as it is. I would drop Branching Fate for No Escape. Because the annoying thing about Magore's Fiends is they have a lot of really good surge objectives, and I drop Frugal for Keep Moving. Other than that, the objective deck is really solid. Gambits, I wouldn't really change anything. I think they're pretty much good as it is. You could argue Haymaker's a good thing to throw in there, or even... but you could argue to drop Pit Trap Overkill. So play this after friendly fighter's attack action that took an enemy fighter out of action. If you dealt more damage than was necessary to take the target out of action, you gain 1 glory. So I think it'd probably add Overkill. And out of that, I would probably drop Pit Trap, because Pit Trap doesn't really help you except for getting a strong start. But the issue is you need to get inspired. But the trade-off is you could drop Pit Trap and then drop Amberbone Axe for Blazing Soul. So choose a fighter, they're inspired and cannot be uninspired. So yeah, let's go through those changes again. Branching Fate, No Escape. Frugal for Keep Moving. I drop Pit Trap for Overkill. And then I would drop Amberbone Dagger for Victor's Speed. I drop Amberbone Axe for Blazing Soul. And that way you just have a lot of... It makes you faster, but also helps score more glory quickly as well, especially as you're targeting against swarm warbands, which are generally quite weaker. Like, for example, if you got Blazing Soul on Riptooth before he charged, he could charge in, score Gather Momentum, and then if you had Overkill as well against a 2-wound fighter, you'd get Overkill as well. But other than that, it's a really solid deck, especially going with Magore's Fiends. I think just it makes a minor tweak here and there would just make it a bit better. It'd still be 14 glory base, but you'd have a more reliable way of getting 14 glory. And then obviously you still have Tome of Offerings to get you extra glory on the kill. You have Overkill for another extra source of glory. And then you still have Amberbone Spear. So you technically have 3 ways still of getting extra glory if you kill someone which is down on 4. But it just makes the warband more reliable overall and the deck better. Editing John here. I accidentally went over time. Wasn't keeping too much of a check on myself. So the video ended up being about 50 minutes long. So I've cut it in half, effectively. So you'll have the first 3 decks and then the next 2 in the next episode, just to make it more viewer friendly, because otherwise it's just too much deck at once. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed the first 3 decks of Rate My Deck episode 1. I'll be back soon-ish with the second part, either this week or later next week. So I hope you enjoyed my first part of Rate My Deck, and I'll catch you soon. So as always, remember to always rate your deck while asking if you can roll a crit.